Hello everyone and happy Wednesday. I am so glad to be back with you here on this Wednesday in December for our midweek recharge. You know, I often have people ask me how long I think it will be before our lives will get back to what they consider normal. How long will we have to wear a mask? How long before we can gather in large groups? How long before we can hug each other? Now, unfortunately, there's no way for us to know exactly how long we will have to wait for the pandemic to pass and for our lives to regain some form of what we consider normal. So here we are in the season of Advent, forced to wait, something that is difficult for many of us. As we move forward in the season of Advent, we are reminded that Advent is all about waiting. Here in Advent, we are reminded of all those centuries when God's people awaited the fulfillment of His promises. There were 400 years between the last words of prophecy spoken in the book of Malachi at the end of the Old Testament and the words that were spoken at the beginning of the New Testament. 400 years of uncertainty, of doubt, of silence, 400 years of waiting. Now, on this side of Christmas, it's easy for us to think about Advent as the season of arrival. And that's true. It is the story of the birth of Jesus, the arrival of God in person here in our world. But we should not forget the waiting that preceded Christ's advent, the waiting that God forced His people to endure, the waiting that marks the time before Christmas. So perhaps here in Advent in 2020, as we wait for so many things, there are some lessons that we can learn about waiting. One thing I think we can learn waiting here in Advent 2020 is that we are not the center of the universe. It is so easy for us to get caught up in our own plans, convinced that what we do is so crucial and so important. But if there's one thing that I have learned here in 2020, it's that other people have plans and priorities. And sometimes my plans and priorities have to wait. This doesn't mean that our plans and our priorities, the things we do, are unimportant, but it does help us to keep things and put things in perspective. It only serves to remind us that we are not the focal point of the universe. Waiting here in 2020 reminds me that life and health is a gift. Our nation has suffered through a variety of tragedies this year, all resulting in loss of life. In addition to the worldwide pandemic, wildfires have ravaged our states out west. A record number of hurricanes have pummeled both the eastern and the Gulf Coast, and tornadoes have ripped across our southern states, all of these resulting in loss of life. If there's one thing I have been reminded of in a strong and consistent way here in 2020, it's that life is a precious gift, and it can be lost or taken away in the blink of an eye. So while I wait here in 2020, I am so thankful to God for the moments that He is giving me. And I am also very strongly reminded that I need to do what I can to care for others who are precious in God's sight. Lastly, as I wait here in 2020, I am learning once again that patience is a virtue and it is healthy to wait. And learning to wait is especially important when it comes to waiting on God. While we traditionally think that we might find God's presence in our worship services in the sanctuary, we have learned here in 2020 that God can show up in a Zoom meeting, He can show up around a bonfire, He can show up on a ball field on Sunday evenings, and He can show up in our homes. Here in 2020, God has shown up and broken through in many unanticipated ways, just as He did centuries ago when He showed up in a humble stable. The Advent season is a great opportunity for us to think differently about time and waiting. God made His people wait for centuries before He fulfilled His promises to them in sending the Messiah. And we've waited many more centuries since then for the final fulfillment of God's redemptive promises in the second advent of the Messiah and in the full realization of His kingdom. Waiting in 2020 reminds me again that this is God's story, that these are His promises and His plan. He is the one in control, and He will take His story wherever He pleases. It's not about us, and things don't always or often go the way we would like. But here in 2020, as in centuries before, God can be trusted, and His plans are definitely worth waiting for. Amen.